This is an oxymoron. Look, this is a river that is on fire. A river, which is a body of water, having to be sprayed down with other water in order to put it out. This is the Cuyahoga River just outside Cleveland, Ohio, burning out of control in June 1969. The fire caused tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage because the flames were high enough and hot enough to damage some of the railroad bridges that spanned that river. This is not hell, and the Cuyahoga River is not the river Styx, but you would be forgiven for thinking so. When the river caught fire in 1969, it was not the first time it had done so. It had caught fire in 1952 as well. That was a big one, $1.5 million of damage that time. Before it caught fire in 1952, the same river also caught fire in 1948, also in 1941, also in 1936, also in 1922, also in 1912, and 3 times in the 1880s. By the time of the 1969 fire of the Cuyahoga River and the river burning through those railroad bridges, Time magazine described 25 million gallons of raw sewage spurting daily into the Cuyahoga River from busted pipes. They wrote, some river, chocolate brown, oily, bubbling with subsurface gases, it oozes rather than flows. A water pollution report at the time said the Cuyahoga contained, quote, no visible life, not even low forms such as leeches and sludge worms that usually thrive on wastes. Yum. By 1969, national revulsion over toxic slime that used to be a river burning its way through Cleveland, and the mighty Hudson River in New York having bacteria levels 170 times what was considered safe. Headlines and scenes like that by 1969 helped catalyze support for doing something about it. And in 1972, Congress passed the Clean Water Act. That commie pinko President Richard Nixon supported the act but did not want to pay for it, so he vetoed it. Congress overrode the veto, and now our rivers don't catch fire anymore. Yay. This week in Washington, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives voted to go back to the old way that we used to deal with it. Every Republican in the House and a handful of Democrats from coal-producing states voted yesterday for a bill to get the federal government out of water pollution control and to let that area of policy go back to the states, like it used to be, like it was back in the good old days. Joining us now, gloriously in person, is Melissa Harris Perry, professor of political science at Tulane University and an MSNBC contributor. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Yeah, came for the party, stayed for the show.
Yes, that's very good. The good old days. This is not going to become law because Senate Democrats are not going to let it, at least I think. But is this landmark vote is this a landmark vote anyway, just because of the substance of it and what it says about the overall approach to these kinds of issues between the two parties?
Well, look, I think so. At some point earlier today, we were asking the question, have we forgotten this? Have we forgotten that rivers can, in fact, catch on fire, that this is how bad our pollution was? And the answer is, in part, yes, we have actually forgotten. You and I have talked before about what it means to be in a long struggle and fighting and failing and fighting and failing. But the other part of it is that when you fight and win, you have to remember that the win is never forever.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of keep struggling around these questions. We're seeing it on reproductive rights, we're seeing it on voting rights, and now we're seeing it around environmental protections.
Environmental regulation is, in the largest sense, about protecting the common good, the thing from which we all benefit. The common good usually does not have very good lobbyists, if it has them at all. So what's the antidote, I guess, sort of procedurally or structurally, to the millions of dollars that energy companies, coal companies, right, are willing to spend to wipe these regulations off the books?
Well, it's funny. On the one hand, that's right. The common good does not in and of itself have some sort of lobbyist, but that's what we're meant to be. I think for me, this is the scariest part of this whole government is this big, scary, awful thing that is somehow outside of us. When your government is a free and fair, democratically elected in regular elections government, then it's not some scary thing outside of you. It is you. It is, in fact, that we, by being together in communal space, we say, okay, look, there are these community assets, air, water, land, national defense. And we know that individually we always have sort of short time horizons. We don't have to be malicious or bad or evil. We can only see so far, and we can only see our own good. So we come together in governments, freely elected, not all governments, that say, look, we will protect our common good, that little inner child that can't sort of speak for itself. Our job as a government is to protect that. And so government regulations, and particularly federal government regulations, are precisely the interest group that these sorts of common interests are supposed to have.
I think that last point about federal regulation, it being a federal issue, is so critically important right now, because what's going on environmental issues on this one is that these Republicans who cast this vote said, we don't want to get rid of water pollution restrictions. That would be awful. What we want to do is let the states take care of this. The federal government should get out of this, and this should be handled by the states.
Because the states are doing so well fiscally. I mean, at this point, the states are hemorrhaging. They can barely keep firefighters and police officers on the street. Are they now going to take this over, even if they wanted to? Even with all the goodwill of the states, they don't have the capacity to do it. And look, here's what we know happens when states and localities and communities get vulnerable economically. They willingly allow polluters to come in, and they do it because they're desperate in that short time horizon for jobs. Look, we have no job. The real crisis, as you've been talking about, is jobs. If there aren't jobs and there's a heavily polluting corporation willing to build on your creek bed, then in these kinds of circumstances, these communities have a real incentive to do so. The federal government helps to create that longer time horizon so that states, communities, and neighborhoods don't have to make these kind of tough choices.
That's very smart. I would not have thought to put it that way. That's very, very smart. I like talking to you very much.
I like it.
It's great to have you here, Melissa. Thank you so much. Melissa Harris Perry is a professor of political science at Tulane University, and she is an MSNBC contributor. All right. As Greater Los Angeles braces for the mother of all pre-planned traffic jams, the question is, jet propulsion or sweat propulsion? I know it sounds disgusting, but it's actually not. I will explain in just a moment.